The project name is menstrual cycle representation. This is the working model of menstrual cycle. In this, the menstrual discharge is depicted using a syringe and a tube. And this is the egg which is available in the ovary is transferred using this light. It can be moved from the back into the uterus. Now coming to the explanation part of it, the menstrual cycle. The menstrual cycle begins with the menstrual bleeding. Once the bleeding stops, the uterus lining becomes thick and begins to prepare for a possibility of pregnancy. After releasing the egg, from here at day 14, arrives at the ampular isthmic junction, somewhere here, where it rests for another 30 hours. Fertilization occurs in this portion of the tube. Once the sperm enters the uterus, it is propelled towards upward. The fallopian tube pushes the egg into the uterus. So both of them will combine here. The egg produces a chemical that attracts the sperm. After successful attachment of one sperm to the egg membrane prevents further After the successful attachment of one sperm to the egg membrane prevents further entering of the sperms. Now, the sperm that is attached to the egg releases chromosomes from its nucleus and combines with the egg nucleus. This is the blueprint for the whole new unique baby. If the egg is not fertilized, the egg breaks down and the hormonal changes signal the uterus is prepared to shed its lining, bringing us back to the day 1 of the menstrual cycle. The graph explanation. The graph is divided into 3 parts: the follicle phase, the ovulation, and the luteal phase. Now these are represented by these lines. Now coming to the first phase, the follicular phase, the menstrual cycle begins with the menstrual bleeding. The follicular phase begins, bubbles of estrogen and progesterone are low. As a result, the top layer are thicker in lining, and shed the menstrual bleeding occurs around this time. The pituitary gland starts sending from the brain, follicles stimulating hormone to ovaries, stimulating 50 to 20 follicles in the ovaries. There will be about 15 to 20 follicles in the ovaries. Each follicle produces an immature egg and produces estrogen. One follicle will soon become to grow faster than the others. This is called the dominant follicle. As the follicles grow, the level of estrogen grows significantly. This increase in estrogen prohibits the secretion of follicle stimulating hormones. This results in dying of other follicles, or which are smaller follicles which are not dominant. This increase in the estrogen ensures thickening of the layer and the nutrients and blood in the uterus. This part. Now, the fertilized egg has everything to grow into a full-grown baby. Now, the ovulation phase. It begins with increase in the follicles stimulating hormones. The surge which is represented here, the ovulation phase. The surge of this allows one of the dominant eggs to release, which heads its journey towards the fallopian tube to the uterus. Ovulation usually occurs between 16 to 32 hours after the surge, around day 14 of menstrual cycle. The luteal cycle phase. At this stage, the levels of luteinizing hormone and follicle stimulating hormones decreases. The ruptured follicles closes after releasing the egg, and this forms the corpus luteum, which produces estrogen and progesterone, which causes the lining of the uterus to thicken even more. If the egg isn't fertilized, progesterone supports pregnancy. If not fertilized, the corpus luteum will break down between 9 to 11 days after ovulation. The result in production of estrogen and progesterone levels, bringing us back to the first stage of the menstruation. If no pregnancy has occurred, the layer will be released and the entire will be entire layer will be discharged into the output. Now we will demonstrate how the egg is released from the ovary onto the uterus. So we can actually move it from the back so that the light representing the egg is moved from the ovary onto the uterus. So slowly it is moving into the uterus. Here the sperm combines and the fertilization occurs. Another thing is, if the fertilization fails, we are using a syringe here. This syringe, when we push, it will enter the blood. When we push it back, it will discharge the lining and the menstrual cycle completes.